Hey there. So with James Gunn's new Superman movie coming out this week, I thought it'd be a good time to do a whole week's worth of videos on Superman here on the channel. So today we're going to start out looking at a classic Superman story, and this is from Action Comics number 775, and this story is called What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. So this is just like a one-off story in Action Comics. This is from 2001. Right off the bat here, we've got a Tim Bradstreet cover for Superman, and I think this might be the only Superman cover he's done. You don't see a lot of work from him anymore. Something kind of different here for a Superman book. So, opening up here, I've got an ad for Incredible Crisis. That was kind of a fun game back in the day, if you ever got a chance to check that out on the PlayStation. So it starts off here, we're 5 a.m. Metropolis local time, and we're kind of seeing Superman flying around the world and kind of hearing sort of news reports going on of like different disasters and emergencies and things. And then we're hearing about something going on in Tripoli. And then we cut to this big shot here of this gigantic cyborg ape that's been killed and has kind of crushed the city here. And then, you know, there's news reports about people can't believe what's happened, talking about the loss of life that's obviously occurred here. This is like a typical metahuman kind of event that kind of went out of control here. So now, while the first couple pages here were drawn by Doug Mahnke, it looks like we've got Lee Bermejo doing a few pages here too that we'll see throughout the book. And again, I don't see a lot of interior work by him anymore. He does a lot of covers, and a lot of covers I really like. And he did some more Superman stuff recently. So we're back in the Daily Planet offices here, and we've got sort of Jimmy, Lois, and Perry talking about this superpowered group called the Elite. And so they're the ones kind of responsible for what happened in Tripoli. And so they're sort of like a no-nonsense kind of superhero group. Now, really, the Elite is sort of a takeoff of the Authority book that was being done through Wildstorm at the time, and is, a book I really enjoyed when it first launched. I know apparently James Gunn is a fan of that book too, and to the point where we have one of the characters from the Authority, the Engineer, in the new Superman movie. So this group, the Elite, is sort of like a takeoff or like a reference to them. And so here we have Clark Kent kind of reporting on what's been going on. And then Jack Ryder, who is also the superhero, the Creeper, shows up. And so we get this sort of back and forth where Jack Ryder is kind of taking the side of the Elite. And so, the big theme of this story is the Elite is a group of superhumans who are willing to take lives. And so it is sort of the new guard versus the old guard, kind of back and forth with them. Between them and Superman. The idea is, do Superman's ways still work today, or do we need a more violent, kind of finality to justice? So now we cut to the White House, and at this point in the comic books, Lex Luthor was president. And so they're kind of having discussions here with Amanda Waller, like how to proceed. Lex talks about how these guys might be more powerful than Superman, and decides to kind of just let this situation sort itself out. Again, probably hoping that these guys take out Superman. So then we go to the Sphere here, and at the time in the comics, this was the Fortress of Solitude. It was sort of like a Tesseract. It's bigger on the inside sort of thing. So it's like Doctor Who's TARDIS, the phone booth that, has a lot more space inside than it takes up in the physical world. So him and Steele are kind of talking about, the Elite and what to do. And so this panel here, I think, really kind of undercuts Superman's argument here, and I don't think it's intentional, but we see him kind of washing his face here, and I can't remember if this was like lava or some kind of solar energy or something. Again, I haven't read these books and since they came out, basically. And so it's like Superman's asking if the world has moved on, and he's like washing his face with gold essentially here. So yeah, not the best way to relate to the common man. But again, I don't think that was really intentional there. They hear the elite is up to something else, so Superman's flying out to stop them. And so then we have this team of Chinese superhumans, and they just start being taken apart here in these different panels. And so this is the elite sort of attacking them and just kind of killing them as their way of dealing with the problem. Somehow Superman is stunned and can't react during this. And then we get the big reveal here, this introduction here of the elite into the story. And so it turns out they were able to sort of block Superman and prevent him from, you know, intervening and stopping them. And then we get the leader of the elite here kind of debating with Superman, kind of criticizing, you know, revolving door jails, how established superheroes never really fix problems, and saying that the elite is solving these problems by eliminating the supervillains. And Superman kind of has it out with them, calling them murderers, and, you know, this isn't how the job gets done. So then as they're arguing back and forth, the elite end up teleporting Superman away to a used car dealership. Now we cut to Smallville, and some more pages here drawn by Lee Bermejo. So Clark's kind of talking to his father, you know, about what's going on. And his father asks him, like, well, if things don't go your way, you can still beat them, right? And Clark doesn't answer him because, you know, there is still the idea that the elite might be more powerful than him, and, you know, what's to stop them from killing Superman if they really want. And so now we've got a page here of just kind of the public going back and forth, and it feels like, you know, they're sort of embracing the elite more than Superman, to the point where we have little kids here dressing up like the elite, but nobody wants to be Superman kind of thing. Now we have another action scene here, so we get these Men in Black looking characters here with some aliens, and the elite show up to help deal with them, and telling Superman that there's more going on than he realizes, that these are, you know, DEO agents, which was, you know, an agency in the DC Comics that dealt with aliens, and saying that, like, they were corrupt and kind of working with the aliens and, like, selling weapons on the black market. And, you know, Manchester Black asks him, you know, how are you defending these corrupt people? And Superman just says, I'll stop them again and again if I have to. And Superman kind of stops the hat from killing here, so apparently he's got, like, he could pull anything out of the hat, sort of like a magic kind of thing. But when he does that, you know, all these cameras, people all over the world see Superman kind of attacking the elite. And so this is going to lead to, like, a showdown with them. Then we cut to Clark and Lois in bed later on, kind of talking about what to do. Lois says he might die for his beliefs at this point. And so now we get to this showdown. Another thing, too, is this issue is really well written. If this had been how they handled the death of Superman back in, like, 1992, it would have been a much more poignant, better story. And so here we have the Elite's ship showing up here. And, you know, they're confronting Superman. Superman says, hey, I don't want to fight here in the middle of the city. You know, let's go somewhere else. So then they all transport to one of Jupiter's moons. As they're here, Superman's still trying to kind of talk them down. And, you know, the whole fight's being broadcast to the entire world. And we see Manchester using his telepathic powers here to kind of take the first hit at Superman, knocking him back. And then the hat drops the giant stone statue on Superman, crushing him underneath it. While Manchester Black is still kind of messing with his head. And then they send Coldcast in here to kind of finish him off, and we get this big explosion down here at the bottom of the page. And then they're kind of contemplating, like, how come some part of their suit always survives when you kill a superhero, as Manchester Black kind of holds on to Superman's cape here. And, you know, we see the ground here is kind of turned to glass from the explosion. And then this voice, this sort of unearthly voice starts talking, says, I finally get it now. And they're like, what is it? And it's, you know, Superman apparently talking to them. And then sort of out of nowhere, Menagerie, her body just sort of breaks apart like this. Apparently her body is made up of, like, different animals and, like, creatures and stuff. And so, like, if you sever that, she just kind of breaks apart. And then this giant windstorm starts up. And, you know, Coldcast and Manchester Black here are sort of protected in this force field. but the hat is still standing there, but the wind is so strong it's collapsed his lungs. And so then he's down, and we just see this red, yellow, and blue blur run off with cold cast. Superman says if you had super hearing, you'd hear him pop in about 10 seconds. So now it looks like, Superman is taking out the Elite with sort of the same kind of tactics they use. So it looks like maybe they have broken Superman here. Maybe, they've made their point for how they operate. We see a flash of a heat vision here in Superman's eye. And Manchester Black tells him, "You're not going to boil my face." And Superman says, "I'm not aiming at your face," as he knocks him away and tells him that he used telescopic and X-ray and heat vision to lobotomize him and to take away his powers. And then Manchester breaks down here, starts crying, saying that you're Superman, you can't do this. This isn't what you do. And then he's saying, everybody on Earth just saw you do this, You came down to our level. And here Superman says, your way is easy, anger is easy, hate is easy, vengeance and spite are easy. And then Superman says he didn't actually kill anybody. He gave him a concussion, and he just sort of incapacitated the other members of the Elite, but they'll all be fine. And then Manchester Black kind of threatens him at the end, saying they won't stop coming after him. And Superman says he wouldn't have it any other way, and that he'll never stop fighting. And so then we get the title and the credits here, What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way? And so this issue was written by Joe Kelly and Doug Monk and Lee Bermejo as pencilers. And we've got a list of inkers here. So we have Tom Wynn, Dexter Vines, Jim Royal, Jose Marzan, Wade Von Graubadger, and Wayne Foucher. So yeah, I don't know if, because this was a bigger issue, we had all those inkers, or maybe there was like a deadline crunch. I feel like there's got to be something if they brought in Lee Bermejo too to pencil along with Doug there. But yeah, a really good issue, sort of a classic Superman story. This was adapted into a cartoon called Superman vs. the Elite. That was on HBO Max. I don't know if it still is or not, but that's worth watching too. So it's just sort of like an expanded version of this story, but with the Elite, with Manchester Black and everything. And like Manchester Black has appeared in other things too. I know he was on the CW Supergirl show. There was a book that kind of came out of this called Justice League Elite that Manchester Black wasn't a part of, but it was sort of like a new version of the Elite, and then some members from the Justice League were in it. That ran for, I think, 12 issues or so. But that's, decent. I don't think it's as good as this book is, but it's worth reading. So yeah, this is one of my favorite Superman stories here, and I thought it'd be a good way to kick off Superman Week here on the channel. Have you read this? If you haven't, you can, because I don't think this back issue is too hard to find anymore. But DC just recently released a facsimile edition of this. And now I have this issue from before, so I got the variant covers. So I got the shiny foil version, and then I got the Superpowers variant, which features this, if they made a Manchester Black Superpowers figure here. And it's got this back here, like the card back to the toy. So yeah, so these just came out recently, like in the last few weeks, so you should still be able to find these at your local comic shop, I would think, or they should be easy enough to find online. Again, this story is also on the DC Universe Infinite app if you want to read it there. Yeah, if you haven't read this, I really recommend checking this out. This is a really good issue. I can see why they did a facsimile. I could almost see them doing like one of those hardcover deluxe editions of this, at some point. Yeah, Joe Kelly, had a decent run on Superman back in the day. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what, if you've got a favorite Superman story. And be sure to come back later in this week for more Superman videos. And thanks for watching. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter/X @Detective651. Also on Instagram @Detective651. Be sure to check out my t-shirt store at tpublic.com/user/Detective651. I've got a lot of nerdy designs on there, and there's sales all the time, so check it out frequently.